All right. Welcome to our class tonight. According to the clock on the wall, it's about that time for us to get started. Had a little rain, a little sunshine, a little bit of everything today, so we've been blessed in either way. Hope everybody enjoyed Monday off, who usually has to work on Monday. Maybe had a little bit of a long holiday and got a chance to see family some. We did and really enjoyed that. Again, Ben is out tonight. This is, of course, not my regular spot. I'm usually across the hallway over there in Joy and Will's class. He's doing a great job. But Ben asked me to come tonight and told me just to get off script and go whatever I want to talk about. So I'm not going to try to follow on what he's been doing. We're going to do something totally different. So a little break, better or worse, at least it'll be different, you know. Before we get started, we're going to begin with a word of prayer, and I'm going to ask Glenn, if he will, to word that for us here in just a minute. And do we have anybody new to add to our list? I have one. Some of y'all may remember my Wendy's niece who lived with us last year. She was going to UNA. Her mom is diagnosed with cancer. She has surgery tomorrow, but they caught it early, and they're very optimistic that this will be successful. But, of course, we're always concerned when you have that. But her name is Renee Mays, so if we will, just add her to our list, if we will. Glenn.
Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for the blessings you bestow upon us. Father, we thank you for this day that we had to think about our lives and study thy word and get our lives right with you. Father, we just pray that you forgive us for our shortcomings, help us each and every day. Father, we pray that you live those who are sick and hurting, especially Renee, as she starts this battle with cancer. And Father, we pray that you watch over and bless her. Father, we want to pray for Eric Johnson at this time that he finds a cure for his heart problems and just be with him at this time. Father, there are many that are sick and hurting, and Father, we know you know who they are, and Father, we pray that you be with them and help them to get back to their rightful places in life. Be with their caregivers, that they may take care of them and keep them healthy, that they may take care of their loved ones. Be with Miguel's mother as she is very sick. Father, we pray that you just ease her pain and be with her. Father, we pray that you be with Mike and Brenda as they travel. Father, we pray that you protect them, watch over them, keep them healthy and safe, Father. Father, we pray for the group that leaves Saturday for Africa. Father, we pray that you be with them. May they have a safe flight, a good success in the orphanage in Africa. And Father, we pray that they arrive back home safely. Father, we pray that you be with Ben as he rides back tomorrow. Be with them, Father. Father, we just pray for this country. We pray that we can always do what's right, that our leaders are always do what's right, and follow your guidance. Father, we pray that you will watch over this nation and protect us. Father, we just ask all this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thank you. All right, most of us, that's the age to be in this class, so we enjoy thinking back sometimes, so we're going to take a little mental field trip tonight. I want you to think back to your childhood. Think back to some of your favorite memories. If it's most of us, that was probably a Christmas when you were a kid, hopefully. Think about maybe that one Christmas when you told Santa what you wanted most of all in the whole wide world. I remember looking in the Sears catalog, seeing what was in there. All right, seeing what you wanted, and then that anticipation of seeing it underneath the tree, and then, getting to unwrap it, and just the excitement of opening that gift. So just think about that for a second and kind of how you felt. What was it? Was it a baby doll? Was it a bicycle? Was it skates, a baseball glove, ball? What was that? Just think about that for a minute. For me, the one that sticks out in my mind was, I think I was 11 or 12, but I wanted a shotgun so bad. Always went hunting with my dad. And his was too big for me, and he proved that to me one time when I kept aggravating and let me shoot it. So I wanted one. So I got a 410 Ithaca single-shot shotgun. It was beautiful. And had to go through a little bit of a gag gift before I actually got the one. Dad had wrapped up something else that looked like a shotgun. I opened it, and that wasn't it. And I thought, well, okay, guess I didn't get it after all. But then they pulled that out front of the sofa, and there it was. So, made a little bit sweeper. So, how awesome that was. But if you're like most people, by next Christmas, that had wore off, and you had something else that you wanted, okay? And I don't know that that's unusual. I think that's pretty common. You know, we get something, one buddy of mine said this, but I said, you know, time you lick the red off that sucker, you're ready for something else, you know. So that's kind of how we are. And as we get older, I think it gets harder to buy Christmas presents for each other. You know, because what do you bet somebody who's got everything or can buy whatever they want? I mean, it's hard to find something. So I ran across a story. It kind of got me thinking about this lesson a few days ago. And the story was that there was 4 wealthy brothers, and they were sitting around on New Year's Eve discussing what they had got Christmas present for their elderly mother who lived in a city, other part of the country. And the first one said, well, you know, I bought Mom a new house, 7 bedrooms, exclusive neighborhood, got her a house. Awesome. The second brother said, you know, I built her a 50-seat movie theater so she can have all of her friends come over and watch movies with her, you know, just have a chance to hang out and be together. And brother number 3 says, well, you know, I've got her a brand new Mercedes, had it sitting in her driveway with a big red bow on top of it Christmas morning. And you know, that was my present. They said, that's awesome. Brother 4, what'd you get her? He said, well, you know, Mom always really loved to read the Bible, but her eyesight's starting to fail. And I found this parrot. And it's a trained parrot, and it took 10 preachers 5 years to train this parrot, but he's got the whole Bible committed to memory. All you got to do is say a book and verse, and he can quote it. So I think Mom's really going to enjoy that. They said, that's an awesome present. He said, you know, it costs $100,000, but it's worth every penny of it. I think she'll really enjoy that here in her golden years. So they said, all right. So Mom gets the presents, and she starts writing thank you notes to send back to the sons. And brother number 1 got his note, and it says, son, this house is too big. I live alone in one room, not even able to go up the stairs. Thanks for the gesture, just the same. Brother number 2 got his note. Said, the movie theater seats 50 people. You seem to forgot all my friends are dead, and I'm losing my eyesight. Thanks for the gesture, just the same. Brother number 3, she said, I'm 90 years old. I don't even have a license anymore. I stay home all the time, have my groceries delivered. I'm never going to drive that car. But thanks for the gesture, just the same. Brother number 4 got his, got out of the mail. Says, you're the only son to have the good sense to give me a gift I could use. Thanks for the chicken. It was delicious. Kind of brings up, you know, can we find a gift that really satisfies us? And if we get it, do we appreciate it for what it is? She obviously didn't get the point of what the parrot was for. Is there anything in this world that can bring us lasting happiness, joy, contentment, meaning? It seems that in this life that true contentment is just always around the next corner, over the next hill, somewhere over the rainbow, just always out of our reach. That next experience, that next year, that next place. And all this leaves us wondering, where can real lasting contentment and meaning really be found? And that's the subject of our lesson tonight. So we're going to look at that vital lesson. We're going to cover one whole book in one night. One of the great books of the Bible, the book of Ecclesiastes. So if you'll turn there, we'll be looking at a few verses in that. And I'll hit a few more as we go through. But Ecclesiastes basically has to do with the preacher or assembly, someone speaking in front of a group. And that preacher, we're not told who he is here, but we get some pretty strong clues. And I think most everybody agrees that they think who the writer was. But basically it's a book about experimentation. It's a personal diary of a man who's reflecting on his lifelong quest to find what brings a person lasting contentment, meaning, and joy in life. The author, seemingly now, is a grumpy, sour old man. He looks back over the years of his life and kind of in essence rolls his eyes and grumbles, been there, done that. You know, I've experienced it all. He's tried education, pleasure, wealth, power, fame, success, hard work, grand accomplishments, and a bunch of relationships. And all that, he's left no stone unturned in his quest to find the meaning of life. And he comes to the conclusion there in chapter 1, verse 2, if you'll read that with me, depending on your translation. Mine said, vanities of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. The NIV says meaningless, meaningless, utterly meaningless, or some say futility. So the point is that it's been worthless. All this stuff I did, I found no joy in all of it. So if you're looking for the meaning of life, the book of Ecclesiastes here, when you first look at it, you might say, well, it's not a very good book. First several chapters are really just kind of downright pessimistic, almost depressing. However, if you read all 12 chapters, I think you'll see that the author actually has an answer for it. I said Sunday night about the vomit thing. Don't just throw out a problem. What's the solution? Well, he spent a lot of time talking about the problem, but he gives a solution at the end of the book. But before he gives it to us, he spends most of the book telling us where we're not going to find happiness and contentment. So as we look at the author of Ecclesiastes says about the meaning of life, let's look at first how he answers the question, what does not bring me peace and joy to this life? And he gives us 5 possible things that he's tried, and none of them worked. Okay. Number 1, he thought, well, if I were educated and smart, then I'd be happy. So many people throughout history have felt that way. Education, wisdom, knowledge, those are the keys to a meaningful and joyful life. In the first first chapter of this book, the author writes about his experiment with wisdom. So let's read in there in chapter 1, verses 12 through 18. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem. I have set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted with. I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened, what is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me. My mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I realize that this also is striving after wind, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. So traditionally, most everybody, like I said, believes the writer of this book is Solomon, and I really don't know who else it could be. He says he's, ruler over Israel, and he's the smartest man. I mean, that's him. Okay, but he goes on here, and we read in 1 Kings a little bit about what God did for Solomon. We won't get into all the details, but 1 Kings 4:29 through 34 says, Now God gave Solomon wisdom and very great discernment and breadth of mind, like the sand is on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the sons of the east, all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, Heman, Calcol, and Darda, sons of Mahal, and his fame was known all through the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees from the cedars of Lebanon, even to the hyssop that grows on the wall. He spoke also of animals and birds and creeping things and fish. Men came from all kings of the earth who had heard of his wisdom. So here, evidently, the writer of Ecclesiastes, Solomon, he's the smartest of the smart, okay? Cleverest of the clever. He reached the pinnacle of knowledge, education, refinement, distinguishment, education, culture, all that. So if ever there was a test case to see if this was going to work, I think Solomon would be our man, okay? Yet, hear his report on the matter. Let's go back to Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and look at verses 12 through 17. It says, I have turned to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will a man do who have come after the king except what has already been done? And I saw that wisdom exceeds folly as light exceeds darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I know that one fate befalls them both. Then I said to myself, as the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? So I said to myself, this also is vanity. For there is no lasting remembrance to the wise man as to the fool. Inasmuch as the coming days all will be forgotten. And how the wise man and the fool die alike. So I hated life, for the work which I had done under the sun was grievous to me, because everything is futility and striving after the wind. So he says, after all that, for all the knowledge I have, he says, I'm going to die just like the fool. In the end, we're the same. So he said that really didn't accomplish anything for me. And we see Albert Einstein, who in our generation is considered the smart man. But 2 days before his death, he said something very similar. Einstein said, those of us who know the most are gloomiest about the future. So, that kind of ignorance is bliss saying. Sometimes that's true. What you don't know won't bother you. So when you do know a lot, it weighs on your mind. The point of all this is, the message here is not that education and knowledge are unimportant. Solomon confirms in Ecclesiastes 2:13, he says, I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. So he's not saying that it's not good to be wise, to be educated, to be knowledgeable. But he said that's not what's going to get you in the end. The point is lasting contentment and ultimate reasoning cannot be found in wisdom, knowledge, and education. All right? So number 2, what else did he try? He said, well, maybe I'd be happy if I seek pleasure, party, fun, have all the fun the world has to offer. In the 2nd chapter, we read about Solomon's experiment with pleasure and fun. In Ecclesiastes 2:10, moving into chapter 2 here, he says, I denied myself nothing my eye desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. Can you even imagine that? Can we imagine that anything we want, nothing holds us back from getting it? I've never been there. I don't imagine any of us have. But I tasted it just a little bit one time. The year I finished college, and then my first job, teaching job, I was not married. I'd worked every summer and during school since I was 11 years old. I finished college and finished my first year of working. I'd saved up some money in the bank. I think I had about $3,000. And I said, this summer, I'm doing nothing. I'm going to enjoy life. I kept a suitcase packed, and anybody that came by was going to the beach or Six Flags or Nashville, wherever they went, I'm in. And so my goal was to blow all this money and have a good time, and I did. Okay, so for that 2 months, I kind of lived that life a little bit. Nothing like Solomon, but and it didn't bring me any happiness. I did finally get a vacation, one summer off, so that was good. Okay, but just imagine anything you want. Furthermore, we learn here in 1 Kings 11:1-3 that King Solomon loved many foreign women. Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. That's probably the one thing we remember the most about Solomon when we hear about him. Wow, surely all those relationships brought him some contentment. Surely all the fun and pleasure he experienced brought happiness, or did it? Irish writer by the name of Oscar Wilde once said the following: in this world there are 2 great tragedies. One's not getting what you want, the other's getting it. Okay? So that's kind of how he was here. The one thing was not getting what you want, the other tragedy is getting it. So the book of Ecclesiastes here chronicles getting everything you want. He eventually comes to the same conclusion as Oscar Wilde in Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and verse 1. Go back up to that. He said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure, so enjoy yourself. And behold, it too was futility. So the truth of it is that pleasure is always temporary, momentary, short-lived, has no staying power. The writer of Hebrews commends Moses for his faith. Go to Hebrews 11:24-26. It says, by faith Moses, when he had grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, considering the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures of Egypt, for he was looking to the reward. So here, Moses did the opposite. Moses had, not to the extent that Solomon did, but to a great degree. I mean, he was the royal family of Egypt. He could have had anything he wanted, but instead he turned that down, said refusing to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to endure ill treatment with the people, and then it says he was looking for a reward. So I think that was true wisdom on his part. He did not do that. So as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, he could have had anything he want. But he chose God rather than fleeting pleasures of sin. Solomon also warns us that even a bold pursuit for good, non-sinful pleasures of life can lead us down a dead-end street. Now, we usually think about pleasure. We think, well, all those things you're not supposed to do. All those 10 commandments, thou shalt not do this, this, and this. But not necessarily that. Even good pleasure, even that can be a problem. Proverbs 25:16 says, have you found honey? Eat only what you need, that you have it not in excess, and vomit it. So even a good thing, you can get too much of it. So even wholesome stuff in excess can make you sick. Ravi Zacharias summed it up this way: any pleasure, however good, if not kept in balance, will distort reality and destroy appetite. I am absolutely convinced that meaningless does not come from being weary of pain. Meaningless comes from being weary of pleasure. I got a story about that one. When I was a teenager, probably 15, 16 years old, but my grandmother made these strawberry cream pies. I loved them. It was my favorite. And she'd usually make one. Well, for Christmas that year, she made 2. And she said, this one's for everybody else. I made this one for you. That's yours. You can have the whole pie. I did. I ate the whole pie. And it made me so sick, I could never eat that strawberry pie again. Every time I looked at it, I got nauseous. So I understand what he's saying here about overindulging in good things and losing your appetite, because I still don't want to eat strawberry cream pie just because of that. Jesus here taught us, though, the exact opposite of what Solomon tried. Solomon tried to find life, denied himself nothing, and found nothing. Jesus, on the other hand, promised, deny yourself and follow me, and you'll find life. So there we see the opposite of what Solomon tried. Didn't work. Jesus came along and said, yeah, that's the opposite of what you should be doing. All right, number 3. He says, now I'll be happy if I was rich. It's been said that things that really matter in life are not things. And I think that bears worth repeating. The things that really matter in life are not things. You know, just like that Christmas present when we're kids, we think it's those things that we want, that present. But when we get older, we come to appreciate it's that time with our family. It's giving those gifts and watching somebody else open them and the smile on their face. That's the thing. It's not the objects. It's not the material things. It's family and being together. That's what matters. So most of us, I think, would agree with that statement. So even so, a lot of people still identify and share the attitude of a guy named Teva, the main character in Fiddler on the Roof. Some of y'all may remember that from a long time ago. But the main character in Fiddler on the Roof, he asked the question, he said, what's so wrong with being rich? And the response was, money is the world's curse. So then Teva looked up to the heaven and prayed, then may the Lord smite me with it, and may I never recover. Okay, so he was plenty satisfied. Just let me be rich. Okay, and when he sings that song, If I Were a Rich Man, then it's obvious that he wholeheartedly believed that point, that being rich was going to solve all his problems, make him happy and content. You know, and we know that from we see now people who win the lottery or whatever. They always talk about how much problems they have, and most of them are broke again within a few years. You know, with more problems than they had before. You know, so money is not going to make us happy. So what would King Solomon, by far the wealthiest man in the world, have to say to Teva and us about trying to find contentment with money? If we go down to chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes in verse 10, he says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity or meaningless. So Solomon had, by all accounts, was the richest man to ever live. I mean, more than any of these guys we got around today. And the Bible lists those, and I'm not going to read all those to you tonight, but you can go in there and look. But it tells about just what was brought for his table every day. It was crazy. And just the tons of gold that was brought to him every year from everybody around. It was just unimaginable how much wealth he had. He had anything that money could buy, he had it. Says time and time and again, we see this truth played out in the lives of the rich and famous. For example, John D. Rockefeller, the richest man of his time, somebody asked him one time, they said, how much money is enough? His reply was a perfect definition agreed, just a little bit more. Okay, so even though he had all that money, so how much money is enough? He said, just a little bit more. Another guy said, well, you know, how much land do you need? I can't remember the guy's name. He said, I don't want all the land. I just want all of it that touches mine. You know, so whatever I got, what touches that, and then that'll spread, and that'll spread, and that'll spread, you know. So, you know, why is it the wealthiest people of the world are often, though, the most miserable? If we look, information from the World Health Organization reports that the countries with the highest GNP, gross national product, those are the nations with the highest suicide rate. So why is it that the have-nots consistently are more content and joyful than the group that have so much we don't know what to do with it, people of the world? So we see that over and over, that it's not what you have. So perhaps the answer is summed up well by a Chinese billionaire who recently converted to Christianity. He was asked, why did you convert to Christianity? And he answered, all my life I spent my time climbing the mountain of wealth and success. When I finally got to the top, I looked around and nothing was there. And I've heard a similar to that. Said people sometimes spend their whole life climbing the ladder of success, and they get to the top, realize it's leaning against the wrong wall. You know, so you do all that work to get to the top, then when you get there, I mean, I'm worried about these people who climb mountains. I'm scared of heights, so that would never be me. But, you know, when you get all that work to get to the top of the mountain, you get up there, the way you look around, like, okay, I guess it's time to go back down, you know. We did it. You know, there's really no great thing of having done all that. So Solomon's message here is clear. A rich life is not getting everything you want, but enjoying everything you have. That's the definition of contentment. So we learn to be content. All right, what was the fourth thing? He said, I would be happy if I worked hard and I was successful and accomplished. Amazingly, if we look at it and we read in Ecclesiastes and really study it, we find out that Solomon's extravagant lifestyle didn't make him lazy. You would think, that he would just sit there and let somebody wait on him hand and foot, and I'm sure he had servants do whatever he wanted to. He mentions that in here when he talks about all the things he has, but he was also very industrious and ambitious. He liked to have projects going on, something he was doing. He talked about all the things he had planted and the animals he had and all these things he did. So basically, he was a workaholic. Ecclesiastes 2:10 and 10 through 11. For my heart was pleased because of all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done, and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. So he gives the same answer he did to these other things. The first three, of all that I did, the hard work, the accomplishments, it didn't really amount to anything either. That didn't make me happy. Ecclesiastes 4:4, he says, I have seen that every labor and every skill which is done is a result of rivalry between a man and his neighbor. This too is vanity and striving after the wind. So he's very competitive, striving between your neighbor, envious, jealous. I want to be, keeping up with the Joneses, which, he was the Joneses, but he always wanted to be top dog. And he says, of all the work that I did, again, that was just chasing the wind. It didn't bring me any happiness. There's tons of examples we could give of this. I got a few I'll read to you. But in an interview with the BBC several years ago, Sting, one of the most successful, influential, and talented musicians of that time, commented and said, I thought success and happiness were the same thing. But when I was at my most successful, I was most unhappy. And you hear that with a lot of entertainers, musicians. They do all that and sacrifice to get to the top. And then when they get there, they said that was the most miserable time of my life. Most of us will never experience the staggering level of achievement, success, and accomplishment of Solomon or Sting. But isn't it interesting to hear that even if we could, contentment and lasting happiness would still elude us? Again, I have a small example of that. When I was coaching, we always worked hard to beat our big rival, and we hadn't beat him in a few years. We had a good team. We had a good plan, and we'd really worked and built for it. And we beat them that night. And, we always say, coaches say, you got 24 hours to enjoy this victory. The buzzer sounded, and we were walking across the field to go shake hands with the other team and the other coach. And already in my mind was thinking, what can we do to beat them next year? I was not satisfied. And I thought, I can't. And I like, what's wrong with you? Enjoy this. You don't get to do this very often, But this wasn't a thought in my mind. What can we do to do it again? So that we're never happy with accomplishments and success. We always want more. In 1818, the writer Shelley published a sonnet that sums up the brevity of human accomplishments. The poem speaks of a traveler passing through a desolate, barren stretch of desert who comes across a giant ancient statue of Ramses the Great, pharaoh of the 19th dynasty of Egypt. On the base of that statue there, these words were inscribed. It says, my name is Ramses, King of Kings. Look upon my works, you mighty in despair. So he was declaring what a great man he was. The traveler in the poem looks upon the works and comments, nothing besides remains. Around the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So all the great works of mankind are short-lived and will one day be subject to decay. So no matter what we do, whatever we build, whatever great accomplishment we do, it's not going to last forever. For one thing, we know that in the end, the whole world's going to be burned up with fervent heat. I like things that are sustainable. When it comes to building, I like things built out of stone and heavy wood and metal. I'm attracted to those kind of rustic log cabin, solid structure. It's going to be there for a long time. I like that. And maybe that speaks to that side of us, that I want something that's going to be here after I'm gone. But, like Ramses, all that's going to be destroyed. It'll rot away. It's not going to be here for us. All right, number 5, the last one. I would be happy if I were famous. That's a thing a lot of people do. You ask little kids when they're in elementary school, what do you want to be when you grow up? A lot of them will say, fireman or doctor or whatever, but a lot of them say, I want to be famous, I want to be famous. But what about that? After winning his second Wimbledon, tennis star Boris Becker stunned the world when he spoke with reporters about his daily battle with emptiness and hopelessness, and it almost led to his suicide. He said, I've won Wimbledon twice before, once as the youngest player ever. I was rich, had all the material blessings I needed, money, cars, women, everything. He said, I know this sounds cliche. It's the old song of the movie and pop stars who commit suicide. They have everything, and yet they're unhappy. I have no inner peace. I was a puppet on a string. And if you are a performer or a pro athlete, to stay at that level, it's a 24-hour day job. Your schedule and your training and your practice consumes you, and you don't really have time. We were watching a movie at home recently. It was about this guy, and the title of the movie was "I Used to Be Famous," or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but the guy had been a pop star when he was in his 20s, and then the group broke up, and he was just struggling to make ends meet after that. And, he was looking back on it, and he had missed so many of life's joys. He had a younger brother who had some disabilities, and he was supposed to go back and be at his birthday party, and he missed it because he had a concert. And he tried to get out of it. He really made a good effort, and asked the manager, he said, I really need to be off. He said, you can't be off. You got to be here. You're going to lead me into this group. And so he didn't make it back to his brother's party, and his brother died. So he always lamented that, and that gnawed at him that, I put my work before my family, and so many of us do that. So that's these people who have that fame and fortune. A lot of times there's a high price to pay for that too. During an interview with Diane Sawyer on Primetime Live one time, she was interviewing Mel Gibson before he did. Or it was after he did the Passion of the Christ movie. And she was asking him about that. And he said, well, let's face it. I've been to the pinnacle of what secular utopia has to offer. I got money, fame, this, that, and the other. It wasn't enough. It's never good enough. It leaves you empty. The more you eat, the emptier you get. So that was his saying of that. Last one we'll talk about here, the time of his death, Freddie Mercury, 70s, 80s rock music, lead singer for the British rock group Queen. He was one of the richest, most admired, and famous men in the world. But in an interview just before his death in 1991, he admitted that he was desperately lonely and demented. You can have everything in the world and still be the loneliest man, and that's the most bitter type of loneliness. In one of his last recorded songs, he cried out in the lyrics, does anyone know what we're living for? So again, you see all that. And I read this too back a while back, but some of y'all my age wouldn't realize it. But David Cassidy used to be on the Partridge Family. There's a TV show about this family that played music, but he was really a pop star in real life too. But when he died, his daughter said his last words were, so much wasted time. I wasted all that time chasing fame and fortune, and I didn't really enjoy life. So that's the negative. I've warned you. Most of it, he's the sour old man looking back about all the things he missed and wished coulda, woulda, shoulda. So what does he say to do? What is the solution? He does give us that right at the end. So Socrates once said the unexamined life is not worth living. Well, Solomon could certainly not be accused of doing that, as we just studied here. In the first several chapters of this book, he's examining his life and looking back all the things he did wrong and where he failed at. So he does spend a lot of time looking at that. But he also experienced all the things that we typically supposed to bring us happiness. His conclusion was that these things, especially in excessive abundance, are going to leave you empty. He concludes that most people are desperately searching for meaning, peace, and contentment, but are constantly looking in the wrong places. When I read that quote about there, made me think back to 1980, to a movie that was popular at that time, Urban Cowboy. Y'all remember that one? Popular song from Mickey Gilley, looking for love in all the wrong places. So that was the theme of the movie. John Travolta was looking for love in all the wrong places. And, that song was a big hit, so evidently that struck a chord with a lot of people. So that's what Solomon's saying here. They're looking for those things, but they're looking in the wrong spot. So what does bring contentment, joy, peace, and meaning to our lives? Well, Solomon gives an answer in two parts. The first one, and these are so simple, it's like this can't be the answer, but it is. First one is just enjoy today. Okay? Just enjoy today. Where can you find meaning and joy in this world? Writer basically says, look around you. Look at all the blessing God has given you today. Enjoy them and be thankful. Okay? So just, when you wake up in the morning, thank God that I opened my eyes today and I'm feeling, I told him when I turned 40, it's like the warranty ran out on a car. Everything started falling apart. I literally woke up that morning, my birthday, and I was hurting all over. It's like, man, if this is what 40's like, I'm dreading 50 and 60. Well, I'm 60, and I'm telling you, I was right. Okay, but I was thinking, well, kind of like I fell out of a tree one time. I was cutting limbs. I won't tell you exactly how that went, but anyway, the ladder fell, and I was about 12, 14 feet up in there, and I hit the ground. Luckily, there's a pile of leaves there, and knocked the breath out of me, and I couldn't feel anything. And I thought for a few minutes, am I dead? And this is what dead's like. And in a few minutes, it started to hurt, and I thought, no, I must still be alive. I'm hurting. So that's what I've heard some older folks say. So it's a good sign. I enjoy hurting every morning I wake up. It means I'm still alive, if I'm still feeling some pain. So, that's what he says here. Be thankful for every day. Look forward to what blessings God's going to give you that day. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 22. So I've seen that nothing is better than that man should be happy in his activities, for this is his lot. For who will bring him to see what will occur after him? And then further down in Ecclesiastes 8:15, it says, there's nothing good for a man under the sun except to eat and to drink and be merry. This will stand by him in his toils throughout the days of his life, which God has given him under the sun. So one of our most important lessons here is probably best summed up here in Psalms 118:24. And we all know this one. So this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. We say that a lot on Sunday when we come to worship, but that's true every day. Every day. That should be our attitude. Thank you for today, Lord. I appreciate it. Another chance to do something. Guy at school, and he's a great guy, but he complains all the time about, he said, I hate Mondays. I said, Monday's a chance for a new start. I said, man, Monday should be the top day of the week. I get to start over. I get a chance to do something new. And I'm trying to convince myself of that when I was telling him that. But, that's true. Don't just wish your life away. Man, I can't wait till Friday gets here. This week's over with. Don't do that. There was a popular Kodak commercial several years ago. You can tell how long it was because we had cameras. We didn't have cell phone cameras. They actually had an ad for Kodak cameras. And in this ad, the mom's trying to get her kids ready, and they're jumping on the bed and just going crazy. And finally, she just gives up. She just gets her camera and starts taking pictures of it. And the narrator then voice comes on and says, stop, look around. This is the good stuff. Don't miss it. That was the point of the camera. There's a lot going on, but learn to enjoy that, Trace Atkins, country singer, he's got a song called You're Gonna Miss This. And if you're a country music fan, you've heard that, but I'll read you the chorus just in case you hadn't. It says, you're gonna miss this, you're gonna want this back. You're gonna wish these days hadn't gone by so fast. These are the good times, so take a look around. You may not know it now, but you're gonna miss this. I think that's how we should be. We should look at it. We're gonna miss these things. So there's two main reasons here that Solomon mentions to help us keep from enjoying today. Why don't we enjoy today? There's a couple of things he said. First, some of us are too consumed with living in the past and longing for the good old days. I think we're all guilty of that from time to time, but he says that's a problem. You can't enjoy today because you're too busy looking back. So do not, Ecclesiastes 7:10, do not say why is that the former days were better than these, for it is not from wisdom that you ask about this. He says that's not wise. That's not a smart thing to do, to sit around reminiscing, thinking about the good old days, living in the past. It's easy to completely miss today's blessings because we're too busy complaining about the state of the world and romanticizing about the way things used to be. And I don't disagree. There was a lot of things that was good, when I didn't have to worry about paying the bills, when Mom and Daddy was footing the bill, and they kept a roof over her head and clothes on her back and food to eat. I didn't have to think about those things, But there were some things that weren't so good too, So we enjoy the day that we have. Number two, he says some people are not going to enjoy today because they're too busy living or worrying about tomorrow. So two things we do: we're too busy looking back, or we're too busy looking ahead. So Jesus had a lot to say about the topic. In Matthew 6:34, he says, so do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So, that's from Jesus. Those are red letters. So that's what he said about it. He says, don't worry about tomorrow. You got enough trouble today. Deal with today. Don't worry about that. I'm a big Alabama fan, and Nick Saban's famous for bringing in speakers, guest speakers, to talk to the team every year, right before the season and during off season too. But the one guy that he has, and I've heard this guy speak 3 or 4 times. He's awesome. But his name is Dr. Kevin Elko, and you can look him up, E-L-K-O, Kevin Elko. But his title is performance consultant. But basically, he's a head coach, and I don't mean head of the team. I'm talking about head. And he works on the mind and tries to develop that part. You know, Saban's all about, says, I don't want to just develop them as football players, I want to develop them as people, as men. So he works on that. And one of Elko's big sayings that he says all the time, he says, be where your feet are. You may have heard that before, but that's a B that he says all the time, be where your feet are. So what does that mean? Well, it's just the importance of dwelling in one's immediate space, concentrating on life now rather than the past and in the future. And for athletes, you know, that's worry about what you right now. Don't worry about what's past. You can't change that. Don't worry about the future. Play the next play. I used to coach defensive backs, and defensive backs, they're going to get beat. It's like a batter. Batter's going to strike out more times than not. You can't let that get into your head. You just got to say, okay, next pitch. Or for a defensive back, okay, you beat me on that play. You caught a pass. Next play. You know, basketball, you're probably not going to shut the other team out. You harp about playing good defense as a basketball coach, but they're probably going to score. When they do, you say, okay, good job. Come back. I'm going to score. We'll come back, and I'll cut you off next time. So in athletics, that's what he's talking about, be where your feet are. But that applies to this too, is be where you are. Concentrate on what you can do right now. Can't change what happened in the past. All we can do is play the next play. A guy once summed it up this way. He said, I used to be dying to get out of college. Then I was dying to get married. Then I was dying to get a good job. Then I was dying to get a promotion. Then I was dying to get the kids off to college. Then I was dying to retire. Now I'm dying and I realize I forgot to live. You know, so that's hopefully that doesn't apply to us. And if it does, let's make some changes. But, you know, Solomon reminds us that the happiest people are the ones who have gratitude for what they have right now. They're going to enjoy it, despite their consequences, what their circumstances are. They refuse to let things that they can't control destroy what they can enjoy. Every single day, even the difficult ones, has its blessings. You know, I saw a little movie clip. I don't know the movie, but they've got this, I think he's a priest, but he's a religious guy on the stand. They're asking him about, you know, whether God is good or whether he answer the age-old question, why does God let bad things happen to good people? And he starts talking. He says, you know, I prayed. He said, God answers prayers. I asked him, do you believe God answers prayers? He does. He says, I asked God for strength, and he gave me problems to deal with. So I asked him for love, and he gave me people with problems to help. You know, he mentioned several things like that. So these things that we sometimes see as the worst thing ever, just an opportunity for us to grow and for us to do while we're here, is to not to be blessed, but to be a blessing to somebody else. If we do that, we'll get plenty of blessings back to us. All right, number 2. The second thing he says, and this is the real simple one, is this: in the end, Solomon finally points to the one who can give life meaning. Ecclesiastes 12:13. All right, and everybody will. I want you to turn there and look at that one. And dog-ear your page there so you can come back to it. Ecclesiastes 12:13. The preacher, as he's called in this, gives us the recipe for a full, content life. He says, now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. He said, it's that simple. If you want to be happy, if you want to be content, if you want to find meaning in life, that's how you do it. Fear God and keep his commandments. That is the whole conclusion of the matter. Sum it all up in one easy answer. So that the book of Ecclesiastes tries to explain to us that life without God is empty. We're never going to find infinite answers in finite things. Another one, I want you to listen to that. I'll say it again. We're never going to find infinite answers in finite things. So we will never find the ultimate meaning in life under the sun until we learn to enjoy God. When we enjoy that, when we don't see it as a burden to serve God, when we don't look at it as all these things I don't get to do, we got to turn around and look at that from the other side. We have a chance to enjoy God, to enjoy what he's provided for us. Solomon doesn't try to be fancy about it. He says if you want contentment and meaning and joy in your life, just two must. You must take God seriously, and you must do what he says. All right? Apostle John speaks in 1 John 5:12, saying, whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life. So ultimately here, only Christ can fill a person's spiritual hunger and thirst. In Christ, the hunger and thirst disappear. The human heart at least finds what's been searching for. You've heard this one a lot of times, is that God made us, and he made our heart with one missing piece, one little puzzle piece. And the only thing that fills that is God. He is that shape that fits in that jigsaw puzzle. We can try to do it with sex, with money, with drugs, alcohol, partying, wealth, riches, what all these things Solomon tried. Nothing fits in that hole. The only thing that fills it is God. All right? So that was his answer. Okay, now I want to come at you with something else. We spent all this time, we got about 5 or 10 minutes left, thinking about how to find happiness and success and contentment and meaning in life. Let's flip the script here and just at it totally from a different think. Think outside the box. What if we aren't supposed to find true happiness in this life? What if that's the key to happiness in life, is that we're not supposed to find happiness in this life? We're not meant to. Think about that. We're not supposed to. It's not nobody can. Well, maybe it's because we're not supposed to. This world is not my home. C.S. Lewis once noted, our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns, hotels, for us along our journey, but he takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of those for home. Been on vacation, and as much as fun as it is, can't wait to get home, sleep in your own bed. I've wanted for years. Somebody asked me today, so what's y'all's dream vacation? I said, for years I've wanted to go in the fall, which I've been working every fall as a teacher. Can't really take off in the fall, principal. So I want to drive up the Appalachian Trail in the fall and just see all the leaves and see the scenery, see the mountains. So I want to take the time. I had a couple at Winfields too, and they said, let's do that. So we'll make a trip. We'll go for 2 weeks. I said, whoa. 2 weeks? That's way too long for me. Maybe a week. But I'm going to get to missing home by then. Okay, all those pretty places, and I'm sure there'll be some great hotels and places to stay and places to eat. But in a week, I'm going to be ready to go back home. So we're not meant to enjoy those vacation spots too much. So Solomon came to realize that to be true. He'd been given the opportunity to visit many of life's delightful inns along the way. However, he always experienced a gnawing sense of homesickness for some place he had never been. At the end of Solomon's lifelong quest for meaning, it finally seems to dawn on him that this seemingly unexplainable homesickness can best be explained as a hint of another world or a real home. So get your songbooks out again. We did this Sunday night. Get a songbook if you got one close to there, and look at number 684. An old song that we're all familiar with, 684. We'll just read through the first verse. This world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh, Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then, Lord, what can I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. I think that old song, we sung it so many times, but did we really pay close attention to the lyrics, to what the message was in that? I think that song that we've sung so many times, it's stuck in our head, that kind of tells us what we're all about. God wants us to be happy. He wants us to be content, but he wants us to be content and happy with him, but always have that little itch that there's something better that I'm looking for. I think hope is the greatest thing ever. And that's one thing I always enjoyed about being a school teacher, is that every year you get to start over. People who don't work in education, they say, well, we're starting a new year, so just another day for me. We go to work, we do the same thing we do every day. It's no different. But for school, it's not that way. Every year, there's hope it's going to be a good year, going to be a better year. What are we going to accomplish this year? So I've always liked that about my profession, being in education. Every year was a chance to start over. So it would be difficult to find a more eloquent conclusion, I think. Some thoughts I want to share with you from a guy named Professor Alistair McGrath, and he was a professor at Oxford University. And there was a long thing he read. I'm just going to read you the very end of it here. He said, "It would be difficult to find a more eloquent conclusion than the following thoughts. Suppose this is not where we're meant to be, but that a better land is at hand. We don't belong here. We have somehow lost our way. Would not this make our present existence both strange and splendid? Strange because it's not where our true destiny lies. Splendid because it points ahead to where their real hope might be found. The beauty of the night sky or a glorious sunset are important pointers to the origin and ultimate fulfillment of heart's deepest desires. But if we mistake the signpost for what is signposted, we will attach our hopes and longings to lesser goals, which cannot finally quench our thirst for meaning." So I think that's a great way of a guy saying it. That kind of summed up how maybe we should feel about it. So again, like I said, this was just kind of a quick run through of the whole book, and it's not a long book. I mean, you can sit down and read the book of Ecclesiastes tonight before you go to bed for your daily Bible reading. Don't get off your schedule, but you know that this doesn't take a lot of time to read this. But he has some real life lessons, and it's right after Proverbs in the Bible, so you know a lot of wisdom and knowledge in there in those places. But you know that last part, I think, like I said, he spends most of that time talking about all the things he tried that didn't make him happy, won't make us happy. He's done that for us. You know, I've heard that saying told by one of my coaches one time. He said, even a fool can learn by his mistakes. The wise man learns from somebody else's mistakes. You don't have to make the same mistakes. If you see somebody else touch the stove and it's hot and they get burned, you don't have to touch it. You learn. So Solomon, maybe his whole meaning of his life was to do all this and record it for us so we can see. We don't have to make those same mistakes. But at the end, he comes through with those couple of suggestions that will help us be more content and find some meaning in this life, which is live for the day, enjoy the day that God has given us, be happy in it, be joyful. And number 2 was that seek him and, you know, keep his commandments. And then the last thought maybe is maybe we're not supposed to be all that happy. Maybe we're not supposed to ever be completely content in this world. We should always be looking ahead, looking for that time. You know, Paul said it. You know, he says, "I'm ready to go. You know, I'm here because it's good for y'all, for me to help you. But for me, it'd be better for me to die and go on." You know, he realized this world is not his home. He was looking for that future home. And you know, what's heaven going to be like? I've heard that discussed before. I don't think our human mind can completely comprehend what heaven's going to be. You know, we read all the imagery we're talked about where it says, you know, streets of gold and pearly gates and those kind of things. But, you know, I think we all realize this is a spiritual place. There's not going to be 24-karat gold streets or pearly gates, but that's just something for us to kind of see and envision. Well, that's the greatest thing we can think of and see. Well, it's going to be that, but it's going to be a whole lot better. So, you know, that should be our main desire is to live in such a way that we get there and take as many people as we can with us. And I heard a preacher say that one time. He said, "This sum it up. This is my life's mission. Get to heaven is take as many people with me as I can go." So hopefully we all live that same way too, and that's our goal. All right, that's all I have for you tonight. It's getting close to quitting time. So hopefully some things that'll help you and make you think a little bit, and again, give you some reading material for you to look at and study a little bit deeper. And if you find something more about it, come back and share it with me. And, I've enjoyed studying this book and would like to add to it some more if I can. So thank you, and at this time we'll be dismissed. Thank you. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.